spoke to one of my team earlier on, who she spends all of her day talking to candidates and asking them, if they're interested in a job and trying to sell opportunities for some of the customers we work with. And I said to her, Rania, what's the number one thing on people's minds? And it's perhaps no surprise to say it's what's the flexibility around the working arrangement. So that was important 2 years ago, but there's no doubt over title, salary, location obviously ties in with that, but the number one thing for candidates right now is the working arrangement. We had a customer come to us a few weeks ago with a role, and they wanted someone in the office Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, and we said thanks but no thanks, because I didn't fancy my chance in fishing in what's probably 3 or 5% of the talent pool. So I know, people like Andaris and Clue, we recruit for them, so we know that they've got the flexible working that helps attract people, which is great, but that's definitely the first and foremost what you need to do. And I think that it's about what's right for your business, so you need to make sure that there is a spectrum, and not everybody needs to be fully remote, not everybody needs to copy the Joneses. I would say that a key thing there is to be able to communicate to candidates that your policies may change, so you may go from 3 days in, 2 days out, or saying it's once, twice a month, or we take everybody to Portugal once a quarter, as one of our customers did, and get them together. But I think it's probably communicating the principles of your working arrangement over the policies. The principles should probably be foundational and shouldn't change. The policies may well do. So if you can say our principle is to have a business where people need to collaborate and we need to support those that are coming in, particularly the entry-level people, hopefully if one of your policies is then to ask the senior people to come in once a week, they understand that fits in with one of the principles of your business. So attracting talent, definitely flexible working is a much bigger part than it was 2 years ago. The other thing I'd throw in is around the purpose of the business. So I think it came up as part of the conversation earlier on when we were hearing from over in Andaris. I think that it's number one, it's number two quite quickly after the flexible working side of things is, well, what am I going to be doing? I think the days of someone going into London Monday to Friday 9 till 5 to pick on a bank unfairly, to work for a bank is definitely gone. The number of candidates I spoke to quite early in lockdown and over the last few months who are thinking much more about the impact of what they're doing now. If you're a business maybe like Ovo that's involved in climate change, and that can become very easy to articulate, but I think whether you're a software company or obviously the story that Clue have is really powerful, but it's the purpose of the business, it's the impact of the work they're going to be doing that is really important. We took on a retained CTO, Chief Technology Officer assignment last week for a company that's involved in the Set Squared network, and their tech is IoT, Internet of Things, to help patient pathways in hospital treatment. And we spoke to one of the CTOs who was a potential candidate for that, and he straight away made that comparison between, well, the other opportunity I've got on is an ad tech company. This is so much more appealing, if they need flexibility on salary, or actually if I need to hold off on the other opportunity to focus on this one, I would much rather do that, because I see my future much longer term being linked to a company that gives me the chance to make an impact in my work. So I think that's another massive thing, is being able to communicate that purpose, whether it's purpose of the company, the meaning and impact of their work, and making sure that that ties into how you're hiring people, how you're retaining people, and everything in between. And I know from the work we've done with Nuclear that kind of sense of what you're looking to achieve as a business as you look to scale is a massive boost to be able to bring in the best people to your business.
So our company Clue, we provide software for managing investigations. So we've hired, in fact we've doubled the team in the last sort of 12 months. My reflection on what's happened, certainly kind of since COVID, one brilliant thing is that we've had many more female candidates and applications, and actually we've got many more females in the business. So we kind of jumped headfirst into remote and flexible working. We were really fortunate. We won 2 big contracts last year, and we delivered them all completely remotely. So we were just we feel very fortunate that we're in a position to be able to do that. So very quickly we realised, so the landscape changed for us. Our customers weren't expecting us to see them face to face. We weren't in the office. So very quickly we were able to use that as a means of bringing people into the business, and I think there's no coincidence that we therefore had a lot of female applicants, and amazing applicants, that people that don't live in Bristol, people who need flexible working, people who are doing the school run. So we've been able to very, very quickly kind of adapt and offer people remote working, flexible working. So I think no doubt our view is sort of really shifted to kind of being a bit more flexible about where people are physically, and therefore being able to attract kind of really good people. And then just to the point about purpose, so our customers are managing investigations into child protection, safeguarding, counter fraud, modern slavery, human trafficking, like really sort of serious stuff, and the tool that we provide helps these people in their work. And I think we haven't always been very good at helping potential candidates understand what we do. So our sort of employer brand, if you like, we're just starting to realise how important it is that we tell our story and we bring what we do to life, so that candidates do see the impact of what of their work. So we had our user conference a couple of days ago, and we actually had some of our developers there, and it was brilliant because they actually heard from our customers the case studies, like how valuable the work is that we do and how they contribute to that.
So I'm COO of Amdaris. We are what I'd say is a software solutions provider. So we have clients who've got dreams and we make their dreams a reality by creating their software. It may be clients who have software which needs to be redeveloped or they need augmented teams. We provide that, and then there's the sort of more, I suppose, boring end of the system where clients need software just to be maintained and supported, and we do that. So it's that whole gamut of some clients just come to us and they've just got these brilliant ideas, and I was one of those clients who had a brilliant idea once upon a time, came to Amdaris, and they made that dream a reality. So I grew a startup business through Amdaris. I think just touching firstly on the point of flexible working, I think it's a really interesting topic because everyone's talking about it in every newspaper you go in, there's something about flexible working. Everyone I talk to is talking about flexible working. I think whilst the market is changing, and there's no doubt that things are changing, one of the things that we've been looking at, and I was trying to find a phrase yesterday afternoon to sort of sum up what we're seeing, and I would call it moments of synergy. And we've realised that when we were together, collaborating, so one of our values is collaboration, being purposeful, being agile. What we saw previously was because we inculcated into our people that we are going to have a culture of collaboration, so everyone is seeking to collaborate with everyone else, and out of that collaboration are sparks of genius. What we realised is that some of these synergies that happen around the whiteboard, around someone just pulling someone in the office, we've seen a drop in those type of synergistic relationships happening within our business. So whilst we're evaluating how to be, I guess, a flexible employer, we're also seeing that we have to balance that with actually our values are so important to us. You know, one of the values that augments what we do is like leaning into problems. What we've seen is the way that leaning into problems has been borne out has been when people come together and a spark gets created. An example is when we're bringing on new projects, for instance, we had some challenges around how do we bring these projects together, and we had this time of an ideation afternoon, and what came out, the processes and the structure and framework that came out was incredible, and that came out from people being together, and that proximity, that physical proximity seemed to do something. And I think what we're sort of learning and what we're trying to work out at the moment is that there is communication and there is collaboration, and perhaps they're not the same thing. And how do we get the right balance between we are communicating well as a business and we're collaborating well as a business? And that's something that I think is going to be ongoing. And I like the fact that you say, don't necessarily change the policy, but show your intent. I think that's something that we really are trying to work out how to do that really well. In terms of attracting talent, I think one of the examples that made me think about this is that right at the beginning of lockdown, do you remember when everything was going off the shelves and everyone was like, I can't get veg, I can't get this, I can't get that. And then everyone just started doing grow bags on their windowsills. They used to have these troughs outside their houses, and all of a sudden they're like, if I can't get it in the shops, I'm gonna mint it myself, I'm gonna create it myself. Somehow, we as businesses didn't catch on to that as quick as possible. We've seen this market where the available talent is decreasing, or the competition for talent is really, really great, and there's not as much talent in the marketplace. And I think one of the things with, like, let's say for instance, grassroots innovation is like, how do we mint more talent? How do we make more coins? How do we create more skills within the marketplace? I think that's the journey that we're going on. So what if we become a place where you could be an average developer, but if you end up in the Amdaris atmosphere, that means that you become a great developer. And in order to do that, what does that mean that we need to create in terms of the support structures, in terms of the learning and the development in doing that? And we've started along that journey, and it's been really exciting, because what we've seen is, I think Andy mentioned that we run projects with managers who are delivery leads. And one of the things that we've recently been doing with our managers, and they were presenting back yesterday, was teaching them about, you know, the dysfunctions of a team, the different types of personalities they've got to deal with, teaching them how to develop those who come into their team. And as they were presenting back yesterday, and just hearing them talk about all of these concepts that they're now using, all of these ways in which they're viewing people differently to how they viewed them before, they're understanding how aptitude and ability over necessary skills is what they can grow in their teams, and starting to realise that actually this may pay dividends long term. So from an attraction point of view, I feel like because the market is as it is, we all need to be creative in terms of the avenues. There've always been traditional avenues of bringing people into our businesses, but we need to look at both creative ways in terms of developing our own talent, minting our own talent, really thinking about, okay, if I want to get people from diverse backgrounds, let's say for instance, how do I write my adverts? What language am I using? How am I conducting my interviews? You know, all of these ancillary aspects around that whole process, so that we can have as wide a channel as possible to bring people into the business, and then as a result of that, the business can grow.
I think this is where there's a really significant opportunity in that entry level talent. We've definitely seen with our hiring, you know, I guess like a lot of businesses, but last April, May time was a pretty horrific place where our job level dropped 90%. Now, for senior and mid roles, they are 30-40% higher in terms of demand than they were pre-pandemic. It's the junior roles we haven't seen it come back. And my instinct is that there's a reluctance within many founders and CEOs to bring on board junior talent, where their processes previously were based on seeing someone Monday to Friday 9 till 5, and they're really now nervous and they're having to overpay for those senior people, or at least pay the market for those senior people. So I think 100% my advice is, it's not always practical, and maybe if you're looking for that lead developer and there's an urgency around it, then you can't grow your own. But I think being able to grow your own, it's a part of the talent pool where people aren't fishing quite so with such velocity at the moment. And I think also your point around diversity, you know, is significant, where if everybody's out there looking for 2-1 graduates, then perhaps you should look for 2-2 graduates. Or even better, don't look for graduates, but if when you said graduate you meant a great problem solver who has independent thinking, then write that in an advert, and whether someone's a graduate or not, you're attractive. Because I think that storytelling is massively important, and I think like to be able to do it digitally is so much more important than before. You know, I remember I was at a tech talk at a Sexpo event a couple of years ago, and there was a guy there who in person was telling a great story about the tech they had and what they were looking to build, and at the same point was saying, I can't find any staff. And I jumped onto his website, and there wasn't even any mention that he was hiring on there. So as a minimum, you've got to put some sort of signal you're hiring, but much more so than that, if you're relying on a job title to attract people, you're really going to fall down. So I think you've got to be able to tell the story of the business, which is partly, you know, showing off the leaders within the business, but also probably telling the story of the team. You know, actually, if I'm hiring a digital marketing exec, they probably care much more about what the last digital marketing exec I hired liked about the business or why they stay than they do about me. And actually I think it's about telling that broad story to help attract the right people and to get that engagement. Of course, if you get in front of somebody, whether it's either in person as we are now or over Zoom, you can tell your story, but the reality is if you're not getting that out there digitally, you probably won't get the chance. And I think that's something that a lot of we work typically with startups and scale-ups, and I think because it's so chaotic and it's so busy, that can be overlooked to something that actually you need to stop and pause and sort of sharpen the axe before you go out there and try and chop down the trees, because otherwise you'll just find you're continually kind of using a blunt instrument to play a pretty challenging game.